In the massive world of video games, it's rare that you'll find one that everyone knows. Obviously there's the classics like Mario Bros and Tetris, but if you played any game in the last 20 years, chances are you've experienced the widely acclaimed masterpiece, Bloodborne Kart. It's on nearly everything. If you pick up a random object, chances are it can play Bloodborne Kart. It's impossible to avoid. There are social media sites dedicated to Bloodborne Kart, shops dedicated to Bloodborne Kart, and an entire skyscraper made for discussing Bloodborne Kart. This was the first racing game, and to this day is one of the only to perfect the feeling of driving a car. It was influential beyond belief, and innovated and invented so many mechanics that are still used today. Of course I, like many others, love the game, and have many memories of it from over the years. There's a really interesting history behind Bloodborne Kart, and development can be traced all the way back to 1993, a decade before it was released. Shigeru Miyamoto initially led the project and was set out on making a game where the player drives a car. Higher-ups at Nintendo thought the concept was very strange and absurd, with former Pizza Hut worker Reggie Fils-Aimé saying, "Why would I want to drive a car?" The game was revealed as Bloodborne Racer during Space World 95, and reports say some audience members even fainted from the sight of a drivable car. There was a lot of trouble internally though, as Miyamoto's ideas became more and more obscure, and he was fired after he decided to attach guns to the cars. The game was cancelled in 1997, but the code managed to spread online. Developers all over the world use elements of it to make classics like Tony Hawk's Pro Skater and Disney's Dinosaur. In 1999, Bethesda were doing well from the success of the Elder Scrolls series, but wanted to try their hands at something new, and decided to create and finish a driving game. Even with inspiration from Miyamoto's code, this was a grueling task. Developers spent weeks without sleep trying to program the cars. During June 2001, Nintendo noticed the project and bought Bethesda. The name of the game was changed to Bloodborne Kart to promote it as if it was the same one they'd showed off during Space World nearly a decade prior. The revived Bloodborne Kart was revealed at E3 2002, and the crowd was stunned that a game many thought they would never play was finally coming out. On July 6th the next year, it was released worldwide and people rejoiced. The game received at least a 9 from every critic on the planet and sold 3 million copies in its first week, but the best was yet to come. As most people know, this wasn't the only version of Bloodborne Kart. In fact, it's available on almost everything, including calculators, Nokia 2600s, and whatever Telstar Arcade is meant to be. Yes, this is a real console. But of course, I can't forget the definitive version of this game. The one that was made after Konami acquired the rights to the series, the one created by Hideo Kojima and Scott Warshaw, the one that caused a concerning surge in gambling addiction. Yes, I'm talking about the Bloodborne Kart Pachinko machine. This is a game so perfect that to this day, it's the only thing with a score of 100 on Metacritic. So the version I'm going to play should be obvious, right? Well, turns out I actually have a crippling depth, so I'll just have to play it on my PlayStation 3 instead. When playing Bloodborne Kart, you race around the track. It all works extremely well considering this was the first racing game. You can feel the weight of the cars when they're drifting around corners and going up ramps. It's so realistic that when you crash you can't race anymore and have to watch an hour-long cutscene of your character being brought to a hospital. The game still looks incredible too. I can't believe it was made in 2003, although the character models are a bit rough. One of Bloodborne Kart's biggest elements are the items. They include things such as banana peels, performance enhancement drugs, and remote explosives. Miyamoto's original concept was even honoured with the inclusion of the AR-15 and homing missile. Items are a divisive topic in the Bloodborne Kart community, but there is the option to turn them off. As for me, I don't. Of course I like them. If I didn't, everyone on the planet would make fun of me and say all my opinions are wrong. So yeah, it's realistic and kinda cool that you can commit homicide while driving a car. I also love that you can lose a race at the last minute because there's a mine which you couldn't see planted right before the finish line. But my absolute favourite thing about Bloodborne Kart has to be the random events. These are genius and keep the game fresh every time you play. Each track has at least 50 different events that can occur. You could have a tornado, sheep crossing the road, a nuclear missile. They surprise you every time since they can happen at any moment. One of my fondest memories of the game was when I was in the middle of a race and a tsunami destroyed the entire track. Of course some people say these things are impossible, but as Todd Howard once said, it may be far-fetched, but there definitely could be aliens living in the middle of the Saharan desert. Since you're driving cars, you clearly need somewhere to race on, and there's a great selection of tracks just for that. Originally there were 124. You might think that's a lot, but nowadays there's one for every person in the Vatican City. And weirdly enough, I could probably name every single one of them. Partially because I'm a useless human being, but also because each of them have a unique design and setting. It's incredible how they managed to create all these different ideas for so many tracks and retain the quality too. None of them are bad, I wouldn't even say any of them are mediocre, they're all good or better. The tracks are also surprisingly open and have a bunch of secret areas that make them feel like a real place. I've spent hours in practice mode just looking around finding new routes, and even then I've barely scratched the surface on all the things there are to find on the 1050 maps. But before you even pick a track, you have to pick your character from a roster of 4 gaming icons. At launch there was a Sega mascot, Billy Hatcher, as well as Luigi from the Mario series. Then there were the 2 DLC characters, Minecraft Steve and King Charles III of Spain. All these characters offer uniquely coloured cars. And nothing else. If you were an idiot, you'd say the developers were lazy since they only added 4 different low detail characters with no unique traits. Well, if you actually look at the cars, you would know that real life models of cars were made by Ferrari. Then Nintendo hired professional painters who painstakingly spent months putting every detail of the models onto a digital image, and after that they got the greatest computer scientists of all time to convert this image into a texture for the car. So yeah, don't assume things about people. As I said, none of these characters offer any advantage over each other, but most people just play as Luigi anyway. Personally, I'm more of a King Charles sort of guy. Apart from the core gameplay, there's a really nice atmosphere which is a good contrast to most of Nintendo's titles that are about the terrors of war and other dark topics. Whenever I play Bloodborne Kart, I know I'm going to have a fun time. Even when I'm losing, there's still a jolly mood to everything. The music plays into this very well, with a soundtrack consisting of environmental noises and heavy metal composed by the critically acclaimed Koji Kondo. Kondo is one of my favourite video game composers. He's always been able to put a wide variety of genres into his soundtracks, and I think he peaked in this era with the Call of Duty and Halo soundtracks. And Bloodborne Kart is no exception. Every piece of music has so much style and personality that even Kondo himself is yet to match. Some of the most well-known video game music of all time comes from this game, and you'd have a hard time finding someone who doesn't know at least one of these songs. Everything I've said about Bloodborne Kart so far make it sound near perfect, but one thing people looking back on it today often complain about are the controls. In order to understand these complaints, I played the game on other systems and did have a bit of a hard time with the driving at first, but I adapted after a while. Yeah, pulling the control stick backwards to move your car forwards is weird, but I think it was a deliberate choice so that the player could be more immersed into driving a real vehicle. Of course, if I was having a real hard time, I could always just change the controls in the menu. It's not really that big of a deal, I'm not sure why everyone complains about this. As stated, I mainly played on PlayStation 3, and its controller is perfect for Bloodborne Kart. Some even think Sony made the Dualshock 3 solely for it. I can't blame them. The boomerang structure and button placement are just like a steering wheel, and make the game so fluid to play. Dare I say, even better than the Pachinko version. The Dualshock 3 actually blows up when you crash, not only forcing you to buy a new one, but also giving you 4 weeks in hospital, all for the sake of immersion, and not meant as a complex way to sell more controllers. So, I've said pretty much all there is to say about Bloodborne Kart itself. I could go on about the many controversies, rumours and real life wars started because of this game, but I'll keep the conclusion brief. Bloodborne Kart is spectacular, ahead of its time, extremely replayable, a technical wonder, and most of all, just plain fun. It influenced authors, directors, and so many more. Miyamoto himself used its mechanics to create the Grand Theft Auto series. It's hard to imagine a world without Bloodborne Kart. Life would just be incomplete. It's not one of the best games of all time. It's the best game of all time. Followed closely by Dark Souls parody, of course.